What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. In this one, I'm going over an excerpt from the Devastation of Baal, which pits the warriors of the Blood Angels going up against the ferocious, ravenous, hungry Tyranids. Now, the Blood Angels have always been one of my favorite chapters. I love Sanguinius. I feel like he really represents the hope of humanity personified into this golden angelic being. Unfortunately, he has died, and that also represents what is coming to humanity: death and the unending terror of chaos. But all is not over, because with his death came the Black Rage, and the Black Rage has infected his sons, and now we have the Death Company, warriors of the Blood Angels that have fallen to become this vampiric, bestial creature. Now in the Devastation of Baal, we see these creatures go toe-to-toe against the Tyranids, as we find out who really is the apex predator here. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Terrifying howls split the darkness, this time coming from up ahead. A deafening scream of multiple jet engines blotted out all other noise. Space Marines clad in black came leaping over the parapets, jump packs flaring bright into the darkness. They shouted incoherently as they fell towards the ground. Their movements were frenzied, seemingly out of their control. They dropped all around the boy and Uigui. Seeing the mortals there, one raised an axe, crackling with angelic power. "Death to the traitors! Death to Horus!" he shouted. There came a muddy clash of metal on metal, the boom of angels' weapons meeting. A priest of the angels stayed the axe with the winged head of his own staff, and two weapons sparkling angrily at the contact. "To the front! The enemy are not here. These are the blameless civilians caught in the perfidy of the traitors. Let them pass. Let them pass." And then the black-clad Space Marines were running on, shouting and roaring, and the chaplain was fine with them at the fore, leaving Uigui and the boy alone. The Death Company came like furies into the fight, leaping over the line of tanks holding back the Tyranids with savage abandon. Their plasma pistols spat bright suns of deadly energy into the enemy. A squad hurled past Ormondale, raging and shouting at the traitors that were not present. At the urging of their chaplain, they singled out a Tyrannofex that had destroyed 4 tanks, and they fell on it wildly. One boosted himself directly at its face, Thunderhammer swinging round as he flew. The blow destroyed half of the creature's skull, but it did not fall until another Death Company Space Marine ran howling at its side, punching his power fist through the chest and wrenching out a lumpen organ. Screaming out of hatred of the traitor legions, the Space Marine closed his fist, annihilating the alien heart in his hand. The Tyrannofex fell forward, dead, but there were many more enormous assault beasts behind it, and they shouldered their broodmate aside into the moat and pressed on. Symbiotic guns convulsing and spraying potent acids and bullet grubs over everything on the battlefield. The Death Company were legion, 100 strong. Ormondale was equally uplifted and saddened to see so many. Giving them their blessing had been an honor, but this was the curse of their blood unleashed in full. So many Death Company Space Marines fought around him, as if there was a chapter of them. In their warring, he saw a glimpse of the Bloodline's future. And yet, he followed in their wake. Upon the causeway of dead Tyranids, the enemy were being pushed back by the combination of heavy tank fire, as well as the Death Company's relentless assault. He thought to direct them, but there was no need. Now they were amongst the Tyranids. They fought like demons, tearing apart the alien beasts. The gaunt hordes of earlier had given way to great crowds of the warrior strain. Given their numbers, it was no surprise how well coordinated the alien assault was. Waves of heavier creatures marched forwards, sheltering the warrior broods with their bulk and thick armor. Shells, energy bolts, and flaming chemicals showered down on the battlefield from all sides. Truly, this was a vision of the mythical inferno. Into the maelstrom strode Ormondale. He ignored the larger beasts, saving his efforts for those creatures that could be harmed by his weapons. He dropped Tyranid warriors with single shots to the eye and smashed limbs with his Crozius. The Death Company penetrated deeply into the masses of the Tyranids. They fought on with the most horrendous of injuries. He saw one still on his feet, with the front of his helmet and all the flesh beneath melted down to the bone. But they were not immortal. One by one they fell to the talons, the claws, the pincers of these monsters, attacking at the Blood Angels. Sorrow to see so many of his blood die. It was impossible to tell who hailed from which chapter, but in the end they all stood together, one blood in death. It was how they should be, he thought. A lone warrior strain came at him from the right, bone sword swinging for his head. The chaplain met them with his Crozius, parrying them with minimal movement. The warrior held a bag-like weapon symbiote in its lower limbs, tipped with a bony funnel, a death spitter. Ormondale filled it with a burst of 3 bolts, rupturing the ammunition sack and sending writhing grubs in a cascade to the ground. The warrior screamed as if it had been hurt itself, and pressed the attack with its twin swords. Yellow, slit-pupiled eyes rolled in the hilts of each weapon. The blades were white and pink, like fresh bone. In every way, the creature was repugnant. Ormondale put it down with a blow to the head that cracked its tall crest in twain. A wide bandvox message echoed in the helmet. All warriors, retreat to the curtain wall. The third line has fallen. Prepare for the wall assault. Hold the second line. Reluctantly, the chaplain withdrew, leaving the bloated multi-chapter Death Company to sell their blood, lives, and gene seed in one last glorious act of violence. And there you have it, guys. You see here that these Space Marines are not in their right mind. They still believe that they're fighting on Terra, trying to save the Emperor and Sanguinius from falling to Horus and his treacherous Chaos Space Marines. So they fight on regardless of what happens to their bodies, be they get cut in half, arms blown off. They keep fighting until they absolutely cannot. And even crazy to this is that it's not just Space Marines that are on the battlefield. The Death Company also has dreadnoughts. So even if these Space Marines are completely blown apart, limbs shattered, they can still be interred in a dreadnought. And even in death, they will serve. So you can see just how brutal these guys can be in combat, and they will literally fight to the last man. One of the more important things here is that you see the chaplain actually having to step in and kind of like usher them into combat where they were about to kill the humans, but the chaplain had to deflect their weapons and tell them to keep fighting onwards. Most of the time, they are actually brought into combat chained up, and they are literally unleashed to do the Emperor's bidding. So let me know what you thought about this excerpt, and let me know if you think if these guys are more brutal than that of the Space Wolves. But that's all I got for today, guys. So as always, thank you for watching, listening, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And as always, this has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.
Oh, if you could put my freedom